Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, we have Dan on the show. Dan is a co-founder of Granite Towers Equity Group, a multifamily private equity firm with over 2,500 doors valued at about $370 million. He's also the co-author of the book, 4 Steps to Successful Passive Investing, and a co-host of the podcast, The Keeping It Real Estate Show. I always love that, right? It's a great name. Something super cool though, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit here on the show. Before getting into multifamily, Dan was a professional snowboarder of 15 years, winning 2 gold medals and 2 silver medals at the X Games, and was voted the number 3 rider in the world by Snowboarder magazine in 2012. As Dan's career, of course, as a professional athlete began to transition, he saw firsthand the challenges of athletes' careers coming to an end. So this led Dan to focus on building passive income, allowed him to retire from professional snowboarding career successfully, right? That's always a key word. Can transition in a number of different ways. But Dan focuses all of his efforts on building large multifamily assets and helping others to build passive income. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking some time out and jumping on with us and our listeners. But for those of our audience that may not be familiar with you, I'm out here in Hawaii, so I don't get a lot of snowboarding that happens out this way. A bunch of our listeners may be a bit, of course, we've got listeners all over the world. Tell us a little bit about your backstory, or who you are, kind of, where you came from. How did you get started in this whole real estate business?
Yeah. I grew up in central Minnesota, and like probably a lot of your listeners, I had big dreams as a kid, and I wanted to be a professional snowboarder. So thinking everybody was going to be like, you're going to do this, it's going to be great. I went and told everybody, went and told my teachers, my friend, parents, you name it. And pretty much everyone was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You might want to have a backup plan or how are you going to do that? Why don't you just, tell me how you're going to make that happen? And being 11, 12, 13 years old, I didn't know how. So I went back to my parents and talked to them about it, the plan and the goal. And my parents were unique. I've learned. And they said, go for it. You should give it all you got. And, they didn't say it was definitely going to work, but they said, try. And I'm grateful for that. My parents didn't grow up doing stuff they loved to do. They worked a 9-to-5 job to get by, and they fed us and kept us warm. We didn't have a ton of wealth. It was just enough, and it was great. But after I graduated from high school, I moved to Salt Lake City. I spent 4 years there. I thought I'd move up to Salt Lake City and be a professional snowboarder next year. Realized I had a long ways to go. I worked night jobs, Abercrombie and Fitch, Blockbuster, Payway, bussing tables at Jack Fridays. And finally, after 4 years, one of my friends paid for me to go to Aspen, Colorado, paid for my entry fee. And it's open, so anybody can come on in and snowboard. And out of like 225 riders, I ended up winning the contest. And so that was the beginning of kind of my career launching. And I had about a 15-year run as a paid snowboarder, traveling all over the world. It was really a dream come true. I got very lucky. It was a very, very fun and passion-driven career. And anyway, midway through my career, I could see it was going to come to an end. And a lot of my hero snowboarders were crashing and burning. Guys that I got to know well in Salt Lake City, their careers were winding down. And I could see the future if I didn't do something unique with the money I was making to try to get some residual income or invest it, that I was going to be just like them. And so started reading every book I could find on wealth and money and trying to actually figure out what to do with the money I was making. Came across a few really powerful books, started listening to every podcast I could get my hands on, and ended up buying a duplex in 2012 and a 9-unit property and right around then as well, and started to see the power of just passive income and depreciation and loan pay down and all that. So that's kind of my background, and we can go from there.
Oh, that's awesome. And there's so much to kind of dissect and go through back, in you just sharing, even just that brief kind of history. And I know it's a snapshot, right? But just kind of, I want to start off going back to, your parents, that's awesome. I mean, I know you're a father, and so am I. And I know a lot of our listeners have families and whatnot. Can't stress the importance of, not crushing your kids' dreams. I mean, for them to give you kind of the leash and can kind of give you the leeway to, hey, you know what? Yeah, no. Yeah. Go try it out. Like, fail forward, right? It may not work, but you're going to pick up skills along the way, and you'll never have regrets looking back saying, man, I wish I would have tried,
Yeah.
So awesome to mom and dad.
Yeah, Steve, I just want to add one thing that all the parents out there, the interesting part, and I'm grateful for my parents, they always just said, do what you love. But, you don't know as a parent, I'm a parent now as well. You don't know what kind of a desire your kid will create and how bad they may want something. So had my parents been legitimate or logical, they've been like, that's probably not realistic, Dan. You should probably go to college. That's more logical step to make sure you make money. And I didn't even know it when I was 11, 12, 13 of how much of a desire, how strong my burning desire would be to make this goal become a reality. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I'm keeping that in mind as a parent right now. Like, I think I have the answers. I think I know what my kids should do, but maybe there's an agenda deep down that they're going to have to bring out and go find themselves.
Well, and it's a testament, like I said, to them and kind of the hard work that they're going to have to put in no matter what. Right. And we experience that as parents now. I have two young daughters and they do pageants and, hey, no, who knows where that goes long term, but it's like, we've seen all of the skills and, the hard work that has to go into that. That's life lessons right there. Whether or not like, whatever it is that they're going for in the moment ends up being like, hey, Miss Universe, or like you got like the Cinderella story there in terms of, man, you actually won gold medals and, you achieved like significant success in that sport. Obviously that may not be everybody's, your experience may vary there. And that's testament to your hard work and your skill and your talent. But man, what an awesome testimony to be able to encourage. And then of course, like that sets you up to be able to show your kids that too. Like, hey, dad can do it. You guys can do it too. Go for your dreams and try.
Totally. I'm such an ordinary guy. I can't even tell you. I came up from central Minnesota, middle class as it can be. And the ordinary doesn't matter where you come from. It comes down to how bad you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, too, something else and kind of you just sharing your, your story there was, you did have to, of course, tried all these different things kind of along the way. I'm sure you picked up additional skills and talents and, hey, found what works and what may not work later on in life, post snowboarding career, post athletic career. You found yourself in a position where it's like, hey, look, my career is winding down. I can kind of see the horizon there. The sun's kind of setting on this stage. How do we set up for the next kind of chapter? Right. And I feel like a lot of people go through that. And a lot of our listeners may be going through that now where it's like, hey, I've had my career as, working my 9 to 5, working as, an accountant or, in the medical field or whatever, there's gotta be something more. And I kind of I got to bolster my retirement or, hey, I don't see myself doing this for the next 20 years of my life until I can hit, retirement age and start collecting benefits and all that kind of stuff. You were kind of have to force to face that reality a little bit sooner. Is there any, what did you pick up along that way of, because you could have gone in a bunch of different directions, like why real estate?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Great question. I mean, my goal was to create wealth. That was really the simple goal of how can I create more passive income than what it costs for me to live. My goal was to, and maybe it wasn't the right way to look at it, but my goal was to not go back to being a busser, bussing tables and working at restaurants. My goal was to continue to have freedom. My goal was to continue to live a life of passion. I was fortunate to have this career take off and make good money. It wasn't millions, but it was good money, heavy 6-figure income. Here you've got this opportunity where you're making good money. What the heck can you do with it to make sure that you can still have a passionate, freedom-filled life? So that was really the main goal. And it still is to this day, is just creating ample amounts of passive income. We have a saying, massive passive income, MPI. So that was really, really it, and again, the tax savings was huge. Like I said, growing up, I was living paycheck to paycheck, snowboarding career takes off, and all of a sudden 40% of my paycheck is being taken for taxes. And I was just like, it was a really big reality check for me. I'm like, what, this doesn't seem fair. I just sacrificed the last 10 years of my life. Literally, I lived paycheck to paycheck, working the worst jobs. And luckily this career works. And now 40% of it's taken. So, there had to be a better way in my mind. I'm like, there has to be something else. There has to be another way of behaving or living to legally reduce this tax bill. And that was another thing that drew me to real estate is if you can qualify and you can set yourself up correctly with a great CPA, and I would advise that, get a great CPA on your team early, which I was fortunate to do. I read a great book called Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. I went and hired Provision. Provision's a firm out of Arizona. Tom's no longer affiliated with Provision, but they're a high level, very high sophisticated real estate firm. And they take care of all of our tax work for us, A to Z, in our business and in my personal life. And that gentleman there, who I work with, has been a huge part of our business and a big guide in my investing career. I talk to him every week. We talk to him multiple times a week sometimes. So yeah, I think Just set a clear goal on where you're going and why you're going there. And, what investment vehicle are you looking for? If you don't have the time and you're looking to, continue, you have a job, you love it, it's great, income's good, you have extra cash, you can put it into some cash flowing real estate. Just got to find the right deal sponsors and make sure you know, like, and trust them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And I definitely agree with that. And two, like you're kind of sharing there, it's like, hey, go to the professionals who are already they're operating at a high level, right? Like, of course you can go to your local CPA, but I'm sure you've experienced it too. They may not all understand, all the dynamics of real estate, all the benefits of real estate. We've been through our fair share, and they're not all created equal. That's for sure. So yeah, so finding the right, vetted ones, the right people who have the skill set in the direction that you want to go, absolutely vital. No, that's for sure. What you obviously went from kind of smaller real estate. You said you got into a duplex to start off. How did you kind of make that jump to commercial? That's usually a big step for most people. I've met a lot of investors. I do a ton of networking, and it's like, well, I've got 50 single family rentals, but man, I can't do commercial like you guys. It's like, dude, you're doing way more work with having 50 single families than, let's say having a single complex with 50 doors. I mean, they're different animals, but how did you bridge that gap?
And if you know what you're doing and you can see an opportunity, if you're good at real estate investing, you understand how the business works, you understand the numbers, you can see the future to a certain extent. You can see what you're buying now and where you're headed and how you're going to get there by your business plan and creating value and moving rents and reducing expenses. So if you become that person and you can find an opportunity, we started with a 45 unit deal. We only had to raise $600,000 or $545,000. At the time, it seemed like a lot, but it was a great deal because we found two properties right down the road, same year built, same construction company. Everything was identical. Rents were $250 higher in both of those properties right down the road. And it was a smaller market. So we could see, we're like, hey, we've solved X, Y, and Z from deferred maintenance. There was a lot of problems with the property we bought. Bring in the cash, fix those problems, compete with the neighboring property. We can at least move rents 150 to 200, maybe 250. So once you do that on 45 units, if you're buying a property that's underperforming and you make it perform, I can tell you right now, if you can see that opportunity and you can see how you can create this wealth, you will find people. Heck, call me up. If you show me an opportunity, you can show me why that deal will move drastically. I'll give you 50 grand. Let's go. But you better know what you're doing. So I think that's really it, is you got to be able to see opportunity where others can't. And when you can find that and you can bring it to investors, now you've got a gem. You're like wavering a lottery card ticket, literally. You're like, you guys, here's where we are. Here's the submarket. Here's what we're going to do. We need this much capital. Here's how much debt we're going to borrow. And here's our projected returns. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, no, and it is. I mean, and that's the power of commercial, let's say, versus residential. Because I know we have a lot of listeners that are, they may have some experience through syndications and passive positions in commercial, but a lot of our listeners are, just like most people. Hey, you know what? Well, I had a long-term rental or two as a house that I moved on from. We have a lot of folks that listen in, that tune in, that are prior servicemen and women. Hey, I had a house that I used to be at a prior duty station. I just kept it and let that kind of turn that into a rental, and so that's kind of their experience, right? But it's like, once you understand the multiplier effect, that kind of the amplification that happens on the commercial side, where it's not just based on, what your neighbor's house sold for, 6 months ago, and you're always going to be capped value wise by what the other market activity is doing. Not saying that that doesn't happen in commercial, but boy, it puts the value is put into the hands of the operator. So if you have a savvy operator, knows what they're doing, great team, boy, it can really, really drive the value of a commercial property like substantially. That's where really wealth is built. So it's huge.
Nailed it. Yeah. I mean, if you can do it well, you can double, triple investors' money in a 2-3 year period. It's nothing to plan on. It's nothing guaranteed, but
right, of course,
find that needle in the haystack and you get to work hard with right CapEx, the right management company, you can see some serious valuation increase quickly.
Yeah. Now you mentioned there briefly about, having the right debt and, that kind of deal, pairing, these projects and particular opportunities with the right debt. We're kind of in a unique situation, right? Like the market has shifted the last, 18 months, let's say. We're coming up on that probably by the time this has come out. Where do you see, the current interest rate environment? Like, how do you see the current market being a challenge, let's say, for operators? What kind of things have you guys overcome that you're still actually able to deliver that double, maybe that triple for, investors?
Yeah. Well, our projections, we're always going to project somewhere between a 1.8 and a 2.0 multiple. So if we put 100,000 in, we're going to project that in a 3 to 5 year period, you're going to get about 180 to 200,000 back. Now, with the market we just have gone through, obviously there was a major run up and debt became very liquid and everybody was using bridge and variable rate debt. And now you're seeing these deals come back to the market because folks over leveraged them, didn't buy a rate cap, didn't manage all of the above well, and they need to get out. So if you have capital right now and you can get in with an operator that knows what they're doing and can close deals, I do believe this is the best time we've seen. Since 2012, 13, 14, 15, this is the best time to be buying. For those that know what they're doing, they're cleaning up on great deals. You're seeing 10, 15, 20% pullback in price, even 25% pullback in price per door. So our model is just low leverage fixed debt. We have some bridge deals. We have just a few of them left. Of our 20 deals we've gone full cycle on. It's just not something that I feel comfortable with. I can't handle the variation in the change in your debt payment. So we've got 95% of our assets are low leverage fixed debt. And that's just the way we're going to stick to. It's what we can, control. It's hard to predict where the market will be. Where will inflation be in this environment after the pandemic? I personally believe that after they created the amount of currency they did during the pandemic, that they're going to have a very hard time getting inflation under control for the next decade. And I think that they're going to have to continue to print money, which is now late in a debt cycle like we are, in order to pay off the debt. And it's a compounding effect. So you got a challenging spot for people because if you got cash and it's in the bank, it will go down in value due to inflation. There's no question about that. The only question is how much. So they're obviously trying to bring that rate of inflation down. How much those numbers are accurate, I don't even know, because when I go out, things are still super expensive and they're claiming that it's coming down. And I'm like, I'm not seeing it come down anywhere. My bills, like I'm seeing it just as bad as it's been forever. So the data is the data, then the reality is reality. So, you got a challenging place for a lot of people, and inflation is going to hurt a lot of people that don't know what to do with their capital and don't know how to live on a budget. And I think you're going to see a lot of challenges the next decade, probably something we've seen a lot of since, for the last 40 years. So I think you need to partner up and group up with the right folks that are doing good things in different asset classes and get your capital to work for you and be a part of that stuff. That's one of the things I love about this is I'm never buying a deal by myself. I'm buying in a few general partners who I've known very well for a long time, who are highly educated, who are very skilled, and then we bring along 30, 50, 80, 100 investors as the team. And then we all go together. It's much safer than, trying to do it on your own.
Yeah. And then, I met a lot of investors that, like I said, they don't trust, for one, which I understand, but they want to go at it solo. And it's like, gosh, you're really limiting yourself when you do that. When you do step into the commercial side of the business, I mean, it's a total team sport, and honestly, we can all get better together. And just like you said, it's like, hey, well, I've got a limited number of people that I can bring, along with us. We're going to be building wealth over here. You can put yourself into a position where, of course, if you know what you're doing, you can get good money doing residential as well. But if you're in a strong market with a great operator, with some awesome, multifamily real estate, it's really tough to beat, especially if you can be in a passive position doing it. I mean, I can't say enough about that. But, again, you got to have people that know what they're doing, that are great operators. Of course, we'll see some stuff in the news that happens. People are experiencing that bridge debt, didn't plan for it. We're over leveraged, and there's always going to be horror stories, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But there's ways to mitigate that risk. And part of that is, again, being with a strong team for sure, to be able to make sure that the project carries forward, and everybody's taken care of. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but that's the big piece, is making dang sure that general partner team, like and trust, and that they're actually being conservative. It's so easy in this business to pull wool over investors' eyes by adjusting little numbers on spreadsheets that the average investor or sophisticated investor may not even catch. So it's really, do you trust the person guiding the ship, and do they have a track record to take you through, the coming 5 years? And the other piece too, that I think is important to keep in mind as real estate, is just to keep in mind to have a little longer horizon time or time. If you give yourself 5, 7, or even 10 years to return capital, you have a way more chance of being able to safely weather the storm, or if you're trying to get a big turn in a year or 2 years or 3 years or less, you're going to have a very unique scenario and a unique economic environment hit to make all of that work perfectly.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I want to go back to a little bit. You're talking about just, the amount of money printing that they did the last stretch. Gosh, I can't stress that enough. And I try to preach into as many people. It's just like, you cannot print that much money, cannot add that much, capital to the money markets and not expect some kind of fallout. And it's long lasting. They don't have an option. They painted themselves into a corner. I fully agree with you that, they're going to have to start printing money again. Like there's just no other way to go about it. The debt service that the government has alone. So, and that's going to translate directly into, ongoing, long lasting inflation. I kind of have to joke I laugh about it when I see it, but it's like, oh, you'll see the banks put out like, oh, hey, earn, high yield savings account. And it's like, well, they're paying out now more than for sure than they have previously. And it's like, well, 4%, 5% or whatever. And it's like, gosh, when inflation is what it is, you're still losing significant amounts of money, even if you're in their high yield, savings account, which I think is just a joke.
It is.
But that's something for our listeners. It's like, you've got to be at minimum, outpacing, inflation and the published numbers again, like just, you kind of alluded to that just a moment ago. It's like, well, the published numbers are, it's a joke. You can't trust that either. Cause I think everybody feels it in their wallet every month, paying for groceries, right? Paying for, just everyday materials. The cost of goods has just gone up across the board, and that's not going away. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, something I want to kind of ask you a little bit about, because it's real big. It's been huge to me, is just kind of mindset kind of for you kind of throughout this whole journey. How important has that been for you? Now you're obviously been in a position where you can give back, co-authoring, co-hosting yourself in terms of, podcasts, obviously doing, the syndication component, you're helping other people. How important has mindset been kind of throughout your whole journey and your whole story?
Yeah. Mindset is the base of everything. It's the, wind at the sail, if you will. If you have a certain, habit of thought, it'll get you a certain result. So, the best way I think you can achieve a goal is first get clear on what your goal is. And then can you find and associate with other people who already are successfully doing it? I think back to my snowboarding career. I was pretty clear on what my professional snowboarding career looked like. And I couldn't go and hang out and ride with a bunch of professional snowboarders, but I could watch their videos on TV and tune into contests and watch YouTube videos. And, really VHS was what I was at. That kind of tells you my age, being almost 40 here. But we would watch VHS videos on repeat all summer long. I grew up in Minnesota, there's no snow. You're not snowboarding there for at least 5 months of the year, probably 6 even. And so we would watch snowboarding videos over and over and over and over again. And finally your mind starts to pick up little nuances as you're watching. I can't explain it. It's a mystery to me, but it works. It trains you, and you'd go back to snowboarding the next year, and all of a sudden you'd be at a jump and you would try the trick first time, never tried it before. Boom, you'd land it perfect. And all your friends would be like, "What did you do? How did you do that? Like, I've never seen you do that before." I'm like, "I don't really know. I just watched it so much that I knew I could do it. I tried and it worked." And, I think that's how everything in life really is can you get clear on your goal? Can you associate and learn the mental habits of those that are doing it well at all costs? That's step one. Then go out and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. So important. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad to be able to contribute. We both can contribute kind of in that realm now too, that there's so much been a big push for, individual creator content. And, obviously we get to give back right here and, through personal experience and, get to share with all the listeners and the people tuning in. So yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, at this kind of point in the show, we have what we call, our fire round, where it's just kind of a little brief Q&A, a little bit more straightforward, quick answer. Is that something you're game for?
Yeah, you bet. Let's do it.
All right. Right on. Well, what's the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad? I know it's a real estate Bible for everybody, but any particular books that you recommend?
Yeah. The two that stand out, and you probably have heard it several times in your show, but Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Of course.
That one is a staple. It hammers home, I think, principle number one is desire, what it's all built on. And then the other one is Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, which is a combination of Napoleon Hill and one other author that's not coming to mind right now, but it's a little thicker book. And man, it just put those two back to back on your audiobook and on your car cassette, or you're working out or whatever, and you'll have some really great changes happening in your life.
Oh yeah. PMA, positive mental attitude. You got it. All right. Next question. What would you consider your superpower?
Superpower, I would say superpower is just creating a clear mental picture of the future and just not quitting, being pretty relentless and saying, hey, this is where we're going and we're going to find a way. Doesn't mean it's going to be just this perfect cakewalk and like straight to the top. It might be a little rocky, but with enough focus and laser focus, burning desire, you'll get there. So I think that'd be it.
Oh, that's awesome. And this is coming from somebody who has been at the mountaintop, has been, has won, gold medals and whatnot. So yeah, no, that's awesome. I like the laser focus. All right. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Biggest lesson I learned over my career thus far, man. I mean, there's different ones in snowboarding than in real estate. You want snowboarding or real estate?
No, either one.
Okay. I would say with snowboarding, it would be start slow. You don't need to go out, and maybe that's one with real estate too. You don't need to go out and ride beyond your level. Like you are where you are, put in the time. And as you ride day after day, month after month, year after year, you'll progress. When you're trying to progress too quickly, that's when injury happens. Injury is going to set you back in not only right now, but maybe later in life. I was telling you, I was trying to run a marathon here and I had a knee injury that happened during my snowboarding career. And, I'm going in from MRI here in a couple of days just for them to see if there's anything they can do. But we removed cartilage, sewn meniscus, chipped kneecap, dislocated kneecap. And at some point, until AI figures out how to solve a knee problem, I'm probably not going to be a marathon runner. And same with real estate, I would say, is just, I know that you're going to have all the gurus saying you can start fast, come and buy a 150 unit deal. And, I'd probably disagree with that a little bit and say, let's just get your feet wet and make sure you're something you like, unless you're going to tag along with somebody who's already been doing it. That is totally fine. That's a total different experience. But don't be the person who comes in and says, I'm just going to go big. I'm buying this 150 unit deal, go raise capital from 15 of your best friends, and then, have catastrophes hit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having that as your first deal and it's a JV or you're just trying to do it. That's just, a daunting challenge for sure. I think that's great advice for the snowboarding and for the real estate. So yeah, no, that's really good. All right. But for the busy working professional that is trying to work towards financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Take your seed money, create a budget. I call work. If you're working, it's seed money. That's what I called my snowboarding. It's the beginning. It's the money you take to go and make it grow. Get onto a budget, create a budget, make a decision. Like right now, nothing is stopping you from changing how much you're spending each month. Like you don't need to pull wool over your friend's eyes or anybody. Just be real. Like I'm making 10 grand a month. I'm spending 11. You're in a tough spot. If you're making 10 grand a month and you're spending 5 and you're putting 5K away, you're probably heading in a good position. Take that savings and just get it into an investment to start paying you money. And as you do that, you will find freedom. Eventually you have to, there's no other way around it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And even just taking those first steps, it's so momentum building. Once you start to see kind of the results of that, after a while, you're just like, well, okay, well, where else can I find, money? Then you start wanting to cut back in certain areas because, if you pile that on somewhere else, it's being productive. It works. That's works. Right. You'll see the fruit. So
if you can create a savings habit and you can enjoy that feeling of saying, oh, I just put another 5 grand a month away. That's awesome. And you start to see it accumulate. And then if you put the cash to work, start another 5 grand savings account, get it saved up, put that to work. Now you've got some nest egg out working while you're working on your seed money.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to an episode or, our interview recently with Jay Leno and, as much success that he had, doing a night show and, doing his stand up, he said he never cashed out his paycheck that he would get from his actual show, that he would actually go out, hustle, do, performing comedy routines. And that was his active income. That's what he was actually living on, like paycheck to paycheck. And he was taking all the rest of his money, and just investing in. I'm like, look, if it's good enough for, a guy like that, who's making, millions and millions and millions of dollars, I think that's pretty good advice for you and me too.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. Right on. Well, how, if our audience wants to, learn more about, they want to reach out and touch base and see what you guys have going on. What's the best channels and avenues for them to do that?
Yeah, go right onto our website. It's just grantegroup.com. And then on there's a little tab, an ebook. It's just for past 4 steps to successful passive investing. When you put your information in there, you'll come into our database. If you want to send me an email, you can as well. Hop on a call with any of your listeners. It's just Dan at granitetowersequitygroup.com. So it's either www.granitetowersequitygroup.com or my email is Dan at granitetowersequitygroup.com.
Yeah, you can learn more about what Dan and the team has, got going on investing. If you want snowboarding tips, you're going to hit them up. But now, Dan, thanks so much for hopping on today. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and hopping on with me and the listeners. And best of success to you guys. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Aloha. Thanks so much. Oh, great episode with Dan. A great guy. What an amazing career that he had as a snowboarder. Not just a snowboarder, because, I'm sure there's been plenty of people that have tried to do it professionally or do it as a hobby, but somebody who's actually won at the highest level, having won gold medals, having been literally one of the best in the world at his sport. I think he's got a lot to offer in terms of just life experience, for one, what it takes to reach and to set, not only set, but to reach, attain those goals that it set before. So that, I love his story in terms of what it took for him to even be able to achieve that success. And then also too, to transition to now doing syndications, doing multifamily deals, creating opportunities to bring other people on board, similar to what we do, to be able to help them build passive income, to build wealth, and to make that a great transition. And I know a lot of people will end up doing the same in their careers as they kind of move on from maybe the initial career and kind of transition to a second career, or even just looking to develop alternate income streams. We talked a little bit about, the economy and kind of state of inflation and, what people need to be doing. Because guys, if you guys are doing it, you do need to be investing. It's going to be impossible to outsave the amount of erosion that's happening to, your savings. Let's say if you're keeping it in cash and you don't have something that's keeping pace with or outpacing inflation. So that's definitely something you got to be having at the top of your priority list, especially to set yourself up. You got family and you want to leave wealth to the next generation. You got to make sure that it's outpacing inflation. So, but all right, guys, well, that's going to be it for us today. If you, of course, have found value in the podcast, we would love your review. Wherever you're listening to us, leave us a 5-star review. If you thought the show sucked, give us some feedback too. We want to know how we can make it better. If there's a way, that we can do that, we're all ears. If you guys have other podcast guests that you want to have on, or, suggestions, we're all always open to that as well. If you want to learn more about the deals that we've got going on, go to our website, tricityequity.com, to learn how you can connect with us and stay in the loop in terms of active opportunities and deals and events and whatnot that we've got going on. If you're here connected locally and you're wanting to network with other people who are actively investing or looking to get started in investing, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. We've got monthly meetups every month. It's a great opportunity to come out, shake some hands, meet some people who are actively investing, both residential, commercial, come out and meet people. Then of course, please share the show. If you guys would greatly appreciate it. We'd love to be able to share the message, get the message out, help other people to build wealth and to passive income. All right, guys. So that's going to be it for today. As always, we really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.